sabotaging trait has been a bastardized word because we look at it as it's undermining us. But if we look at the original word of sabotage, it's a French word that they said that in late 1800s, that the French workers would sabotage or slow down, create inefficiencies to get the attention of the factory owners. And when I realized that's the true word of sabotage, I realized it's there to shake things up, to tell us that there is an imbalance in our own lives. And then it also is just a protection. So when I went through my list and I went, what the heck is wrong with me? There was nothing wrong with me. I was just protecting myself. During those times, not achieving those goals, I was doing other things because it was less painful to do than actually achieving my success. And when I realized, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And as I went through it more and more, I realized that this trait actually protects us from the very success that we seek, because if we actually achieve that success subconsciously, it would be more painful. So we never get to that point.
Wow. What an incredible story. And Phil, I just want to, one, thank you and acknowledge you for being so transparent, so vulnerable, and so incredibly honest around your own set of tragedies, everything from losing a parent to almost losing a daughter, going through a divorce, having legal issues, lawsuits, almost losing your license. I mean, golly, that is a lot of stress. So during that journey, you said that you actually discovered hidden inborn sabotaging traits that prevented you from being as successful as you envisioned for your life and actually hitting those 5-year goals that you set for yourself. So what is a hidden inborn sabotaging trait? What does that mean? And what did you discover about that?
So what I was able to discover was that there's actually just 3 traits that make up who we are. And you may want to write these down. It is called the director trait, the supplier trait, and the communicator trait. Director, supplier, communicator. And how it took me a few years to really create these words that meant so many things, that these 3 particular traits make up who we are. So as human beings, we direct, we supply, and we communicate. That's all we do. There is nothing else that we do besides these 3 things. We can look at other words that mean very similar, but there's only 3 things that we do. And I was able to take that and look at the atoms and the galaxies and look at everything in life, that these 3 things is what we are made up of. And when I realized, I then saw that there was actually a sequence, and I called it the personality stress sequence. There's the personality stress sequence. And when we were looking at this, we were realizing, depending on who you were, and then over years of research, found that you were actually born with this trait, with this sequence. So you have what's called a dominant trait. Then that's your superpower. Then you have a mediator trait, and then the saboteur, which is the inborn sabotaging trait. So think of about a seesaw, okay? And think about a light kid here, fulcrum is here, and more of a heavier kid here, and you're kind of like sitting like this in a sequence. So when we realize that depending on who you are, so you would have a particular sequence. So as a communicator, you may be in the saboteur region, your dominant may be more director, things like that. And then we realize that there's really only 6 sequences of human behavior. So therefore, there are only 6 people in the world. So those of you who here does podcasts, or they speak. Anybody speak on stage or speak in front, anything like that? Right. So imagine whether it's a 50, 20, or even 1,000 person audience. Imagine knowing that there are only 6 people in there, and knowing how to arrange your speech in order to connect to each and one of those 6 people. So instead of just hitting a few people in a general way, you can now be able to be specifically talking to each and every person. Okay. So now we have this sequence. So as we started looking at this, I got to let you know, when I first found this, I went, this is too simple. There's freaking no way this is it. It's too simple. So I went out to try to disprove it. And over 30 years of thousands and thousands of people that I researched, I couldn't. And I actually found a way to switch it off instantly. And I called it the antidote. And the reason why we called it the antidote, I thought, well, if I have something that works 100% of the time, and I'm about to, let's say, if I'm being bitten by a venomous snake, do I want something that might work, or I want something that always works? Do I want the antidote? Of course, you want the antidote. So I thought, if I'm in a situation, my business, my personal life, and I'm starting to now go south, do I want to try to figure this out and think about how this is going to work, or do I want the antidote that works 100% of the time? And so that's what we found. So when you start to release your personal professional power and you hit that uncomfortable situation, your saboteur kicks in to protect you. All right. So imagine getting to that point and knowing as you start to contract, right, and you start to protect yourself, knowing why you're doing that, and then using the antidote, which is the exact opposite to the saboteur. Now you can go do this. Instead of doing this all the time, which is your hamster wheel, you can do this and get past that uncomfortable situation. And now knowing that, hey, the catastrophic things I think is going to happen if I actually get things done, if I actually express myself, if I actually now take for myself and deserve that this is for me, that these things don't happen. And it's just an illusion that you have that subconsciously you're protecting yourself.
I love that. What a clear and simple explanation for your inborn sabotaging traits. Now, you said there's only 6 different kinds of people. So help us understand the inborn traits that exist and how we can identify which one of those inborn traits we fall into.
Now, I'm going to give you your inborn sabotaging trait. So I know there's only a few people that are videos are up, and the other people are probably listening, no big deal. But I'm going to have you to start asking to put some things in the chat, like a 1 or a 2 and a 3, so I can see who I have here, what kind of saboteur you are, and then from there we can have a discussion. If you have a question during this process, please just unmic and ask me a question. We're not, I'm not, hey, I now my next section, I got to talk about this. Let's just have a conversation, because this is something new. And I always tell people, if you're looking for something totally new, this is it, because no one else is teaching this in the world. And we know this because no one else, I've had people from Jack Canfield to so many people never heard about this and was very interested in my work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an example and explain to you each of the saboteurs. Now, remember, all 3 are in us. All traits are within us. Now, remember how we had the sequence. The heavier kid is what we call the saboteur. So there's only 3 saboteurs out of 7 to 8 billion people in the world. There's only 3. I know, I didn't believe it either. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you each and every one. This is what's going to happen. I've done this so many times. This is what's going to happen. You're going to say to yourself, I hear myself at all 3 within me. Yes, they're in you, but you're going to use one more often than the others. And that's why the sequence continues. All right. So let's go about it. So the first one is the director saboteur. Okay. So as you're going to hear, we're going to name each of the 3 traits, but we're going to put that one in the saboteur position. So the saboteur. The director saboteur is a person who's overly scattered. They're unfocused. They're all over the place. Chaos stimulates their brain. They'll get 99% done with something, stop, and then do something else, because when they don't have enough knowledge, they'll freeze. They don't trust themselves enough, or they hate the details of certain things, so they won't even go there. They don't like to be told what to do. They don't like to be held accountable. They don't like to be held responsible. Right. So they'll continue to do things, but never finish their task and not be aware of what the heck's going on. Now, they will go to the other extreme, and they can get hyper focused, right? Because they waited till the last minute. Now they get hyper focused to get this done. They have a kind of a time distortion. Hey, honey, I'll be out in 5 minutes, and 5 hours later, they emerge. Know anybody like that? So now you're really focusing on it. They finally get it done. They go, and then they realize they got all this other stuff they have to do because they just hyper-focused here. They didn't allocate their time properly. And now they go back, and now they're scattered all over the place. Okay. Sound like anybody? If that sounds like you, put a 1 in the chat. Okay. So what happens is one of the things I forgot to explain to you is that the saboteur, you can never get rid of it. Never, because it's there to evolve you. I'm going to say that again. You can never get rid of it because it's there to evolve you. Why? Because when you start to release and you start to hit that plateau, you're ready to evolve. But because it goes into protection, it stops you. So the saboteur brings adversity in order for you to get through and evolve past those challenges. Okay. So that's a director. So we have about 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have a few directors in here. Perfect. Now, the supplier saboteur. Now, so what happens is the director will always have going back and forth between scatteredness as well as hyperfocus for the rest of your life. But you'll feel more comfortable in the scattered position. But when you're forced to, then you'll have to hyperfocus, but then you'll go back and become more scattered. Okay. Again, I'm going to talk ones and tens. All right. You may sometimes feel, I'm not always that way. Correct. Because when you don't do that, because you're actually using the antidote and stopping yourself from doing that. Okay. So now let's talk about the supplier saboteur. The supplier saboteur is a person that overly gives, they overly share, they overly supply. They have a hard time saying no because if they do, they'll feel that they're being selfish. They feel that they have to serve others. They focus on everybody else's feelings and not their own because it's too painful to focus on theirs. So they'll start overly giving. They misinterpret that selfishness does not equal self-nourishment. So they'll give and give. And then what happens is the people in their lives, they will actually not they will not reciprocate as much as they're giving. And they get kind of upset about that because they're giving and people can treat them like a doormat because they take advantage of their kindness. And then what happens is they can go to the other extreme and go, I'm done with you, hell with you. I'm taking for myself. Now, depending on the person's situation, they'll feel guilty and then they'll go back and overly give. So for the rest of their life, they will always try to find the challenge between balancing their giving and their taking. If that sounds like you, please put a 2 in the chat. All right. So again, overly care. Now, these are the professionals, okay, that when they have a new client, they'll give them free stuff because they don't feel valued. So they actually give them because they feel more valued by giving free stuff, which actually devalues them. All right. So if you know anybody, so if you didn't put a 2 in the chat, do you know anybody? That's your spouse, one of your children, your boss, your partner. Okay. Now, the third one is the communicator saboteur. Communicator saboteur is a person that doesn't express themselves. They're a little bit more reserved. They have a hard time confronting things verbally majority of times because a lot of times when they start to actually talk, people can overly talk over them and they'll just disconnect. They can overthink, they can overfeel and have a hard time disconnecting from that. So you may have a conflict with them thinking it's over. 3 days later, they'll come to you and say, you know what, I want to talk about this. And you're like, what? I thought we were done about this, right? So because they have a hard time disconnecting. Now, they'll give you a nice, good, long text or a long email because they'll have enough time to look at it, make sure it's in the right place, and then they'll set it out. But verbally, they'll pull back. So these are the people that you have no idea what they're thinking and feeling in the majority of times. Okay? So they have a hard time expressing. But then they can go to the other extreme. Piss them off long enough and disrespect them too long, then they'll do like the volcano, they'll explode on you, okay? Or they'll still tell you you're an idiot under their breath and you still don't know what they're talking about, and then they will disconnect from you. So they will always have a challenge between expressing themselves and then pulling back, and they're going to go into the shell. So if those are you, please please put in the chat a 3. Now, can one be all 3? Remember, yes, you have all 3. However, the majority of times you do one more than the others. Okay. Rashmi, does that make sense? Okay. So what happens is that we have people with their mediator trait and their saboteur very close because they have so much going on. They just can't figure it out. All right. But that's why when you take the quiz later on, I'll tell you, you're going to go back to think about when you were a child, when you were maybe a teenager. You'll see more often with that, because a lot of times coaches, as well as like therapists that take the quiz and are my clients, they start using their own antidote or all the information they've learned at that moment. But you got to go back to, as a child, what you were. Okay. Does that make sense? Questions, Linda? Anything from there?
No, I think that makes all kinds of sense. Thank you so much for explaining the 3 different types of sabotage behavior. That's really, really helpful. So once you understand what your default sabotaging trait is, how can that help you lead more effectively? How can you use that knowledge to overcome your sabotaging traits and lead more effectively?
So we just talked about the saboteur. We didn't talk about the other 2 traits. So once I know your sequence, I can tell you everything about you and never meet you. I can also then ask you about a few questions about your spouse or somebody else, your significant other, ask a few questions about them and tell you everything about them. And then I'll tell you how you 2 interact and never ask you a question. Because we have that down to a science of these particular traits react in this way with other situations. So imagine knowing the saboteur of a potential client. You'll know the resistance, and you can now guide them into your product and service if that product and service is right for them. Imagine knowing why you don't close. We found that when you don't close, it's your saboteur actually stopping you from closing the sale because it's more painful to actually close them. I know it sounds ridiculous, but we prove it 100% over and over again. Has anybody here know anybody that talks themselves out of a sale? Where they talk too much and they keep on and they overwhelm the person. If you know anybody like that, I see Jay smiling. I see Rasmi. Right. So why does that occur? Now, I've talked to many of sales managers, and I would ask them, what would you do with that type of person? And they would go, we would give them communication training. And I said, I wouldn't. So that's the last thing I'd give them, because they're great communicators. That's their dominant trait. That's their go-to trait. They talk a lot. They're great communicators. They love to connect to people. They like to disconnect from things and then things that don't work well, like to reconnect and make it better. So what happens is that the reason why they're overly talking is because they're saboteur. So let's say they're a director saboteur. Well, if they're scattered all over the place, they haven't been focused and they don't do certain things, they're going to use their communicator to overly connect, go tangent here, do here, and just overwhelm the hell out of the person. Do you ever know anybody that does that or have done that yourself, right? Or if you're a supplier saboteur, you're not going to feel valuable. So that's why you overly share, you overly give too much information. You may give things away for free because that communicator is actually trying to help you feel valuable and show the other person that you are valuable. So a lot of times, the majority of times, your superpower actually causes more sabotaging than even that area. But as soon as you know your antidote and you start doing that, it will start immediately cause you to become an effective communicator. I had a client one time, when she tried to sell me, I was so confused that she actually became a client of mine. And within 2 weeks, she sold $84,000 because we were able to show her what she was doing, rearrange how she was presenting, because in her body, in her inner state, she wanted to overly give because she had all this, because it was going to help them. Supplier saboteurs like, I really want to help you. And that's why they overly talk. And you're like, pull back. And I told them, I said, people feel that if they actually hire you, they'll be in more pain. So they're going to go to somebody else. Right. So does that make sense regarding that? And that's just one of the sequences. Imagine knowing every sequence. Someone who overly thinks. Who here overly thinks? If you overly think, put a 1 in the chat. That's your dominant. A dominant is a person who's very structured. They, don't color outside my lines, I'm going to knock you out. right? So they're very structured in that way. But the reason why they can become overly structured, micromanagement, they can overmanage people, is because of their saboteur. And as soon as they use their antidote, they'll manage people more effectively, they'll influence them, and they'll become the leader that they know they can be, compared to trying to force people to do some of the things they need to do. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, it really does. I love that. And just one more question about this. You said there are 2 additional traits. There's 3 different kinds of saboteurs and 2 additional traits. Can you explain those a little bit?
Right. So the 3 traits is they're the director, the supplier, and the communicator. They're within us. Depending on how you're born, you will have those traits placed in that personality sequence. Okay. So then, depending on what your superpower is, once you understand your superpower, you understand the mediator trait, which is the bridge between the superpower and the saboteur. By understanding how to work them together, that's when life starts to work quickly for you. So let me give you another example. So I was doing one of my workshops. I did a workshop to show people that how the business owners and the managers and the employees subconsciously sabotage their business. By the way, your own business has its own inborn sabotage and trait and antidote. So he was really excited. He really was getting into this for the whole day. He comes up to me and goes, my son's always upstairs playing video games. I can't get him downstairs to interact with the family. So I asked him a few questions. We ascertained his son's sequence. I then told him exactly what to do, a little more deeper. And then within a week, he calls me and says, my son's downstairs playing and interacting with the family more effectively. And then 2 months later, he calls me and tells me our relationship has really skyrocketed. And what we found out was that he was the one pushing his son back in the room. His son was a communicator saboteur. What do? They don't like being embarrassed and feeling stupid. But he was making fun of him because that's how he grew up, right? He was not making fun of him to hurt him. He was trying to, get him going. But as soon as he started shifting that, his son then felt more respected. He felt more empowered. And then the relation grew. And then he realized his business, he was doing the same thing in his business. So your business and your professional and your personal life are one. As he started realizing the business, his business grew, and his relationship with his customers as well as his staff grew as well. So when you use your saboteur, both your business and your personal situations are affected. And when you use your antidote, both are affected at the exact same time.
I love that.
Was that helpful?
Yes, that's super helpful, Phil. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'd love to open it up now to others that may have questions.
Yes, definitely. Please. Love it.
Heather, I know in the chat you said, I don't know if I see myself. So would love for you to come off mute if you don't mind and talk to Phil a little bit about what you're experiencing or you are driving. So be careful.
I am. Yeah.
So maybe you cannot look at us and just drive.
Right.
But talk a little bit about what you're experiencing.
Yeah, I'm not really finding myself in any of those things. I mean, if I look back, maybe because I'm ultra focused. I can tell you I'm ultra focused in most things, and I am a communicator. I'm not sure that I fall into that thing where I'm reserved and then I talk later. I don't think that's quite right. I think I probably over communicate. So yeah, I'm not really, I don't know if that helps, but
no, yeah, it helps perfectly. So in their situations, let's say you have no problem when you have a stranger have a conversation and talk and help the conversation go more and more and more, correct?
Right.
Okay. So the question is are you always, have you been in the past where you want to help people? You feel this compelling to help people, that when people ask you to do something, you have a hard time saying no or not now. Back when, again, you may be doing things. Is that one? Or are you hyper-focused right now because you're trying to catch up on all the things that you haven't been doing in the past?
Yeah, I'm not really. I mean, with that being, I don't know. I do procrastinate.
Yeah.
So maybe I would fall more into that category.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
To me, I think you have no problem. You wear your emotions on your sleeve, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So majority of times when I have this discussion, it's a director saboteur because they're not aware of what they're actually doing, because of they having so much going on that they're overly connecting. So Heather, you probably can overconnect to so many things. You love it. You love get that brain going. And then you're probably hyper focused because you realize, oh my God, I just haven't gotten things done, or I just said so much. Yes, let's keep it going. And I should have never said yes, but I acted first. I became emotional. Then I felt about that. And then I realized, oh my God, what the hell did I put myself into? Does that sound?
Yeah, maybe that's probably true.
Okay. So that means you're a director saboteur and your communication is your dominant.
Okay.
That makes sense. See, now I can continue and tell her everything about herself. I can tell her why she does what she does and everything else, and never ask her another question. Once you understand that, imagine knowing that for yourself at that moment, knowing when you are in a resistive state or you're in that process of overly communicating, how to immediately shift it to become a more effective communicator. Does that resonate with you?
Yes. So
Yeah.
that's what I was kind of not understanding, was how do you use this stuff then in order to unsabotage yourself?
Right. And that's where we do our course. We dive deeply into that. We show you in week 1, your saboteur, dive deep into that. The second one is about your sequence. Well, one of the things, when you know your sequence, you can change others without them knowing it. We had a coach one time knew her. Once you knew her sequence, her relationship, her husband, her weren't doing that great. But once she understood her, she understood his, and the relationship grew, but he never knew she was taking the course. So we can actually show people how to shift others. We've helped save marriages. I had my last person about a year ago. They were going to call the lawyer the next day. And I said, give me a month, which was a lot cheaper than the lawyer and divorce. And they're still together because they realized they didn't hate each other. What was happening is they were just protecting themselves from each other. And then bringing their child in and the other one in, it created this whole thing. But once they understood why each and everybody did what they did and had some techniques to specifically help their antidote, the relationship grew. And I see this consistently. I've helped about 4 to 5 marriages at the same around that too. Imagine children. Knowing each and every one of your children, you'll know exactly how to deal with them in a subconscious way instead of just blankly just treat everybody the same.
So Phil, let me just ask, we just went through what we believe might benefit Heather, to understand Heather as a director saboteur, and what she may want to start integrating into her behavior in order to break through to the next level of success, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about the antidote.
Let's talk about it a little bit, the antidote for everyone. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to warn you. Like I said, I've done this too many times. The antidote is so simple. Few things happen. You don't believe it. You try it. It works. And you think that's all you need to do. I've had a professor one time say, you know what? And we actually changed our results page because of this. She says, I thought this is all I had to do. And now I'm in your course. I'm blown away. This is so much deeper than what it is. But I'm going to at least give you guys your antidote, because when you take the quiz, you'll get it. You'll get the one sentence. But we don't dive deeper into it because because it's all new, they try to go into different places. Some people overthink, they overfeel. We've seen this too many times. Like I said, worked with thousands of people. So we have it to a point. So I'm just going to give you the sequence. So with Heather and all the other director saboteurs is good question, Rashmi. I'm going to get to that. So what I was doing with Heather, I was actually using her antidote in order to tap into her antidote to make her aware. And her antidote is to become aware and follow through. Okay, to become aware of what's happening around her. Director saboteurs, they will talk to you and you will talk to them and they're looking right at you, but they're thinking 52 other things at the same time while they're looking at you, because they're trying to offset the conflict. Look at Heather. Yes. They're looking at them and they're like, how can I how can I give the solution to this person, or how can I win this fight, or whatever the case may be. And then the person says, what do you think? And they're like, I have freaking no idea what this person said because I wasn't even paying attention. Or they'll be on their phone, their spouse comes in and then like, what'd you say? Are you kidding me? I've been talking. So her becoming aware and then actually following through and actually complete a task is actually painful for her, because if she actually completed that task, it would then cause other things as well subconsciously that she's not aware of. But once you become aware and follow through, then you have no problem following through and completing those tasks. And then on top of that, not bring the chaos in consistently to stimulate your brain. And that we had a client in our lab. We have 2 classes happening right now. He says, I do my best work under pressure. And I said, no, you don't. And I said, give me 3 weeks and I'll prove that to you. Within 2 weeks, he goes, I can see this now, where now things are more calm. He's getting things done. And now he's creating even better contact than he was in waiting to the last minute. Does that resonate with all the director saboteurs that are here? Put a 1 in the chat, kind of yes. Okay. So again, that's what I said for 30 years. This can't be this simple. But then we kind of, in the course, we dive deeper and deeper into it. You got to realize this. You ever see the domino masters? They push the one domino and it goes, shh, the last one hits, and let's say balloons are released. Well, what's the last thing you see? The balloons, right? That's your imposter syndrome. That's your anxiety, your depression, your stuckness, anything else you feel what? Negative. So what do? We take our coping methods and do what? We put them on the balloons, not the one domino. So what's easier? Hold down the damn balloons and stop pushing the one domino. And the domino is your saboteur. So with Heather, when she pushes that director saboteur, every emotion that possible will be created. Your saboteur creates every negative emotion. And we prove that to you. So when you push this down here, you go down the road of frustration. But as soon as you push the antidote, the exact opposite, then it's impossible to sabotage yourself. And you now go down the road of inspiration and motivation in order to get the things done that you need. Does that make sense? So we're always focusing on what we're seeing last. If you're pissed off or angry, what do? You focus on the anger and the pissed off. It's not what actually started it. And then on top of that, we actually give you one subconscious word. You know, there's actually one subconscious word that stops all your goals. One. It stopped it in the past. It's stopping it now, and it'll stop it for the rest of your life. Might be a good word to know. Once you know that one word, we give you 5 steps to offset that one word. So you have to achieve your goals. We actually prove that to you as well. So can you see the power with knowing this one little thing? Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what I discovered. But for now, that's what we do for the 5-week course. Now, let's talk about the supplier saboteur. So if we have any supplier saboteur that are that I can see? No, or all you guys directors? Probably also your supplier, Rashmi? Okay. So let me answer your question. You said, can you be a different saboteur at different times of your lives? No. Okay. How can I do that? Because I've been working with so many people. You think what happens, you have 3 saboteurs, because what you do is we have people that have so much going on, their mediator trait looks like they're sabotaging themselves. So for instance, let's say with Heather. Heather has to a point where she can have so much going on that she feels things are not going right. She's giving too much to other people. She's oversharing at times. Would that agree, with a head nod, if that was at times Heather, right? So if she's going that way, she'll think, I'm not valuing myself, so I have to start valuing me. But she's focusing on the mediator, not what will cause the mediator. So she gets scattered first and then devalues herself, compared to a supplier saboteur who devalues themselves and then they get scattered. Can you see the difference? It's very subtle, but as you go through the course, it makes so much sense that we actually only give you 3 words that you use, and you'll see these 3 words are always used in this sequence. So the supplier saboteur is to write this down for you supplier saboteurs, is to value myself and others. what you do is, while you overly sharing, overly giving, you're not valuing you and your own who you are, but because you feel from whether or not how you were told and how you're brought up, but it's also innate that you have to always give. And when you value you, you'll start feeling more empowered. But then also there are times you guys can now devalue others. Tell, like, you're an idiot. That's just the stupidest thing I ever heard. Now you devalue them. Okay. So that's why the antidote is going back and forth about value yourself and others. Communicator saboteurs are what? Express and connect to myself and others. They need to start slowly learning how to express themselves. All right, learning to come out of their shell, that it's not going to cause an instability. It's not going to cause them humiliation and things like that. Who here is a communicator saboteur? Anybody on thing? No? Okay, so those are the communicator saboteurs that they need. Does that answer your guys' question?
Yeah, that was terrific. Thank you so much. And interested in anyone else who has a question. Rashmi, you've added some really great comments into the chat. Jay, Dee, David, Aaron, anyone else have any questions for Dr. Phil?
Rashmi, how many times have you heard that you need mindset?
Very often.
Okay.
But again, like Linda, I feel I've achieved far more success than I ever imagined. So obviously I'm doing something right.
Right. And I will never, ever say you guys need mindset. You need feel set.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the person that really, the saboteur that needs mindset is the director. Because the director, is really deals with the mental aspect of who we are. The supplier deals with our feelings. That's why you guys focus on feelings. You don't go with your gut instinct. You don't focus on the second brain, which is our gut. Okay. There's a book called The Second Brain. It's got decades old, but showing that there are actually neurites that are in the gut that actually they function without the brain. And that's why dopamine, which is our focus neurotransmitter, 50% is made in the gut. And serotonin is just our feel joy is made where? In our gut. Okay. So you would need feel set. So we would dive deeper in how and what does that mean to you? See, just see Linda's eyes just went like, wow, no one's ever said that to me.
Yep.
Communicator saboteurs need heart set. Communication deals with your heart. And they also, with heart math, they have shown that there are neurites in the heart that can be can be working separately from the brain. And the heart is where we emanate ourselves. Okay, we emanate our electromagnetic field. And when you go deeper into my work, you'll realize that the communicator deals with the physical world. It deals with the physical part of us because we have to communicate physically. The director deals all about mental and thoughts. And the supplier deals about our spiritual, our abstract, and our feelings. So the director, supplier, and communicator is exactly as the mental, spiritual, and the physical of us. The communicators are our motor. We emote feelings. Feelings and emotions are not the same. I actually show you they're two different things. So does that make sense? Does that help you in a little bit more clear that I would never tell you, Linda, to have mindset? Now, is mindset good for you? Yes, but that's not the first thing to focus on. You would focus on your feel set, and depending on what your dominant trait is, you would then possibly go from, to me, you're very organized, very structured, right? Right. So you want to help people. A lot of times you'll go, and I don't know this, right? A lot of times you'll go, let me just do it. Get out of the way. Let me just do it. It'll be faster, right? That's what your sequence does, because you want to get it. You want to help them. I want to manage you because you care about them, but then you do it for them. You actually enable them. You become selfish and you actually weaken them. And how do you stop overly mindsetting? We would then show you how to feel first. Therefore, your thinking will be better. You think first and then you feel, compared to feeling and then thinking.
I love what Heather said in the chat. I will get some probiotics for my gut. That's great. That's great.
So is that resonating a little bit more? See how we're going a little deeper, and it's just not about this little we're talking about here, but it encompasses everything. The three, director, supplier, communicator, encompass every part of who you are within yourself, as well as how it affects everyone that's in your world. And
Yeah,
the
I think
only way-
you have
I'm sorry.
definitely explained not just the hidden saboteur traits that may impede success, but also how to switch it off immediately, what the antidote is. That is awesome. So if